Would I be the a-hole if I didn't pay for my daughter's college tuition? I, 44 male, am divorced and have been for over 10 years now. My ex-wife and I have 2 children, one son Ben, 19, and one daughter Lauren, 17. My ex-wife and I split custody 50-50, and I paid child support on time every month, as well as ensured our children had everything that they needed for sports and other activities. At a young age, I started a college fund/early life starter fund for the kids, which they were aware of, and has grown to be a large amount through the years. Over the years, I have always had my children on my time and tried to be present in their lives. Ben has always been happy to come to my home, have family time, tell me about his life, have a father-son role pretty much. Lauren, on the other hand, is the total opposite. She pulled away at a young age, and when she was old enough to decide for herself, she cut me out pretty much 100%. I spent years of reaching out to her and trying to build some type of bridge with her, but nothing ever worked. She went to a few different therapists, and I can only hope it helped in some other aspects of her life, but it certainly didn't help in a family role. Over the past few years, my son has become angry with his sister and calls her ridiculous. I've told him to not mind that and it's not her fault, but him leaving for college changed me on the whole thing. When he left, I felt like I lost my only child, and I gave up trying to have a relationship with Lauren. She never reached back out, and neither did I. It felt terrible at first, but it's much easier to deal with mentally for me. A few weeks ago, Lauren and her mother reached out to talk about her college tuition and where she had decided to go. They asked me if I wanted to go walk the school with them again, and I declined. I told them that I felt I was only being invited because my checkbook was needed. I informed my ex and Lauren that I would not be paying for college or any other of her expenses after her 18th birthday, June, and that I was going to use the money elsewhere. My ex blew up at me. My daughter didn't say anything, and when they told my son, he called to tell me he thought I was right and Lauren was to blame. I wasn't a fan they told him to begin with. However, now there's a rift between the 3 of them. Should I just let this whole thing go and pay for her education? Would I be the a-hole if I stuck to my decision? Now for the top comments. Info. Why did she cut you off? You leave a very important detail out. When my ex and I divorced, my ex kept our house, which was close to her friends and family. I moved to the other side of town, maybe 25 minutes away. She pulled away after I moved out and has told me that she wants to spend time with her friends and grandparents. Just to say, I voted not the a-hole. Is it possible that your daughter blames you for the breakup, or was it a take sides kind of situation? My ex-wife's entire family blames everything on me. My ex-wife's sister was having an affair. I found out she was covering for her sister's whereabouts and why, and told her husband. Not the a-hole. I do not understand Reddit's hive mind to spout that parents should accept their children's hurtful behavior, especially when they're old enough to know that their actions hurt. I also don't get why someone who goes no contact is entitled to someone to fund their lifestyle after no longer being a minor. Parents are human beings. They aren't infallible individuals with no feelings. Lauren is being incredibly selfish and extremely entitled to think she should be funded for college by a person she has chosen to exit a relationship with. I hope he's not a walking bank. You spent time reaching out, and she has blocked it every term. At some point, this adult, because college students are adults, has to recognize there are consequences to your actions. I think Ben is completely right. Your ex-wife should be blowing up at you. She should have spent those previous years helping her daughter to therapy to understand this intense dislike. Lauren went to therapy, and Daddy basically blew her off when she was 10 because she wasn't the daughter he wanted. Now he's further punishing her by taking away her college fund at near last minute. No, he isn't punishing her. She chose to not have a relationship with him. Going no contact means no contact. It means no financial banking. She was a child. Technically, she's still a child. And his last-minute withdrawing money that was set aside starting years ago with the expectation that it would be used for her college, that is punishment. And now she's going to be an adult with adult responsibilities. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for preventing my ex from moving 3 hours away with our kids? It's created huge conflicts in both households now. My ex-wife blindsided me with news that she was moving 3 hours away with her fiancé because he got a better paying job. And the kids, who are 11 and 14, wanted to move too. I have week-on/week-off custody. There was no way I was giving up that for just every other weekend visitation. I then found out that her fiancé had already sold his home here and had bought another one there. I immediately went to court to get an emergency order preventing the move. My ex begged me to let her go, but I refused. In the end, she was prevented from taking the kids more than 50 kilometers from where I live. Unfortunately, the fiancé broke up with my ex because of this, and she has had to move in with her mother while she looks for an apartment because she can't afford a big house anymore. I would like to say that I won, but I didn't. My kids are now extremely angry with me for causing their mother to lose her fiancé. They hate living cooped up in their grandmother's home, and are now taking out all their anger in our household. They've said some heartbreaking stuff to me and my wife. My ex, who I used to co-parent amazingly with, now does everything she can to create turmoil in my household. She has even verbally told me that she's going to use our kids to break up my marriage as revenge. And my kids have done stuff that make me believe she's going through with her threats. My wife is saying she's at her limit. Am I the a-hole for how I reacted though? I just didn't want to lose my kids. Info. Did you talk to your kids about whether or not they wanted to move before you sought an emergency order preventing it? Might they have been promised some sort of bribe to go? My fear would be that you may have won the battle by preventing the move, but that you stand to lose the war. At 14, your oldest is likely to be old enough to have their wishes given very serious consideration if they no longer want to stay with you. And if your youngest is not yet old enough, they're not far off. They wanted to move, but it was because they were promised a horse at the new house. I felt they were being bribed to be kept away from me. And kids have a say in custody when they're 15 where we live. My youngest is only 11. If this had been a proper discussion, I might have decided differently. But I felt forced to get the emergency order because it happened so last minute. This is probably going to be unpopular, but everyone sucks here. The kids are old enough to decide where they want to be. At any point during this, did you actually talk to them to see what they wanted? It doesn't sound like either of you are actually trying to put the kids first. Edit. Can you elaborate on what your children are doing that's ruining your marriage? At any point during this, did you actually talk to them to see what they wanted? And the kids, who are 11 and 14, wanted to move too. Yeah, I saw that, but I'm still wondering if he actually sat down and had a conversation with them before reacting the way he did. I just wonder if he actually tried to hear them out or just decided their feelings weren't valid. Like saying they only wanted to move due to bribes, which may be true, but did Opie come to that conclusion by having an honest conversation, or did he just decide that himself without listening to them? It could be that they genuinely wanted this new opportunity and they truly just liked their mother's new partner. Totally fair. He replied that it was because they were promised a horse at the new house. So it could have genuinely been bribe motivated, but it could also have been more complex. I do think at their age, their wants should have been considered more seriously than it seems they were. I also find weaponizing your kids to be abhorrent behavior, so I'm fully on board with everyone sucks here. This is awful, but you did not create this situation. She did. Not today, Hall, and the courts agree with you. She had to know this would be a problem, which is why she didn't tell you until it was too late for her to make other reasonable plans. If her fiancé actually broke up with her over this, they didn't have a very strong relationship to begin with. The next story is titled, Would I be the a-hole for making my half-siblings take DNA tests? My dad was a pro athlete. He wasn't famous, but he was a steady presence on a team that was. When his career ended after injury, his first wife divorced him, cleaned him out, and got custody of their kids, turned his kids against him, and never remarried so she wouldn't lose the alimony payments. When Dad met my mom, his ex threw a fit because Mom came from a poor family / wasn't white, and according to his ex, she was a gold-digging hoe because she was pregnant before they got married. My mom died when I was young, and we struggled for money between the payments Dad was making and his injury / lack of education, making it hard for him to get a job. My half-brothers were really well off from his support payments and the money from their mom and her close friend she was living with. Whenever they stayed with us, they made it clear that they were only there because of the custody order and that they thought we were trash. When Dad saw how upset they were making me after my mom died, he stopped asking them to come. Dad passed away a few months ago. His will left everything to me, so I'm basically set for a modest life. As adults, my half-brothers never had contact with him, not even on holidays or his birthday. Suddenly, they're saying that I'm not his. They're going to compel a DNA test, that I influenced his will, and they're taking me to court. I have no doubts that I'm his, thanks to a DNA test I already took years ago for non-paternity reasons that they don't know about. What I am starting to question is if any of them are his sons. Would I be the a-hole for agreeing to take a test, but insisting that they have DNA tests too, knowing that I'm not going to give them anything even if they pass? They and their mother treated my parents and me horribly. I don't want to know how far the hypocrisy stretches. I also sincerely want to not have any of them actually be my family. Now for the top comments. Info: what would be the point of demanding DNA tests from these people when it changes nothing? Your father left a will. They are not in the will. DNA does not change that, so what's the point? I think depending on their relation, if nothing is given, they can contest the will, which I assume is why they're taking her to court, so it would just cement the fact they have no rights to anything of the dad's. They already aren't your family. Just go no contact with them. How would they even compel a test? Did your father have a will that said, my stuff goes to my favorite son/daughter, or did it say, my stuff goes to OP? Not they, Hull. They definitely are, but just drop the rope already, for your own mental health. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for trying to stop my dad having a baby with his wife? My 22 female, dad 52 male, and his wife 42 female got married around 8 years ago. She was initially very charming and sweet, but behind closed doors, she became very manipulative a few years into their marriage. I, still in university, moved in with my dad and his wife when I was 19, and she made it clear she didn't want me around. I also became increasingly concerned about the way she treated my dad. I witnessed constant gaslighting, and I could see him beginning to doubt himself all the time. They were also trying for a baby, and his wife had 2 miscarriages over this period of time. My dad let me know that he did not really want a baby. However, he wanted to make her happy. At that point, I did not have any problem with them having a child together. However, there was constant tension in the house, and his wife eventually moved out into a flat nearby. She maintained to my dad that they were still in a relationship, and he remained loyal to her. However, she became unavailable to my dad and was constantly out at bars, being cagey with her phone around him, etc. Basically, it seemed to me that she was stringing him along while possibly seeing other people. That was 14 months ago, and for the past 6 months or so, she has refused to contact my dad in any way other than sending each other letters back and forth. She has also since moved 7 hours away from us, and so her and my dad have not seen each other for around 6 months. About 9 months ago, my dad's mom, my grandma, died, and she did not answer any of his calls during this time period, although she knew what was going on. Recently, my dad has been really unhappy about how unavailable his wife is. He has been drinking much more, and seems really depressed. So the other day when I found one of the letters from my dad's wife to him, I read it. I know this was nosy and invasive, but I did out of concern for my dad. In the letter, she says that she has, as they have agreed, I didn't know this, been going to an IVF clinic and was about to start the screening process. However, the clinic have told her they won't go ahead with screening because her and my dad are no longer together. She then says to my dad that they could get a solicitor to draft a parental agreement, but she says this would cost them thousands of pounds. So she suggested that instead, they both lie to the IVF clinic and say that they are together. It seems to me as if she's trying to dissuade my dad from a legal document which would protect him. To an outsider, it seems very clear that she doesn't want a relationship with my dad, refusing contact, moving 7 hours away, constant ultimatums and game playing. But that she wants to have a baby with him because he will pay for the IVF and will have to pay child support. She does not work. He earns a good amount. I would like to contact my dad's wife. She hasn't spoken to me since my grandma died, if only so she knows someone is onto her. Am I the a-hole for wanting to step in here? Not the a-hole. She is abusing your father. I would have a frank discussion with him about what, if any, benefits he gets out of the marriage. He needs to get a legal separation at the minimum and a divorce, just to protect himself from whatever he is doing. I would like to contact my dad's wife. She hasn't spoken to me since my grandma died, if only so she knows someone is onto her. OP, don't talk to her. Talk to your father like Dallas says. Not Dayhall. Hire a private investigator. Need pictures to show her with other men. She's probably living with another man. Lying to that man and definitely lying to your dad. She's trying to extort money out of him. Get your dad some help. He needs therapy to break out of whatever delusions he is under. Stepmom is diabolical. She doesn't need a baby. She wants money. She will convince him to deposit money in her account so that she can pay for treatment. Have your dad insist that the IVF has to be done in his city. Non-negotiable. Not Dayhall. I would write the IVF clinic and tell them she and your father have lived 7 hours apart since X date. I would also write that they intend to lie in their forms, and you don't think that is in the best interest of a baby. I have thought about doing that. I don't know how I'd provide evidence though, and whether the clinic would even care. I wish I knew what clinic it was too. It's somewhere 7 hours away where she lives. Am I the a-hole for refusing to walk my daughter down the aisle? My daughter, 26, female, and I haven't spoken in years. When she was 15, we found out she wasn't my biological daughter, and that my wife had cheated on me years ago with a friend. As it turns out, the so-called friend was suddenly interested in playing dad. My wife and I divorced. My daughter learned the truth, and I told her I still loved her no matter what. Of course, she was interested now in getting to know her biological father, and while it hurt, I tried to accept that. She started pulling away from me after that. Even when trying to still do things together as a family, she was no longer interested. The last straw was when she was 20 and living at my house. We were arguing because she dropped from her college courses, hasn't done anything for 3 months, and mad because I told her she either needed to go to school or work if she wants to stay here for free. She told me I'm not her real dad, so stop pretending like I am, that she'll just go stay with her real father. That broke me, honestly. But I told her if that's how she really feels, then there's really nothing left to say between us. And she didn't move out to go live with him. I was depressed for a very long time. Drank so much. My son, 24 male, was my only reason to keep moving forward. For the first couple years, I reached out to my daughter, but she wanted no contact, and I learned to accept that and move on. It helped me find more peace in my life. My son stopped talking to her for a while over this and was angry with her. They still chat sometimes, which doesn't bother me at all. And through him, I learned her biological father died in October 2019, also that she's engaged. She then reached out to me. First, that she knows that we haven't talked in a while, but wants to ask me if I'd be willing to walk her down the aisle. After a pretty long message about how much she hurt me in the past with her actions, I told her no. She didn't want me to be her father anymore, so I learned to no longer view her as my daughter. This turned into a fight between us because, according to her, it's not her fault she wanted to know her real dad. And I agree with her it's not. But what was her fault was how she treated me ever since. In my mind, I know if he hadn't passed away, we wouldn't even be speaking right now. It ended with telling her I hope she enjoys her wedding, but I want no part of it or her life. My son has told me she's ranting to my family that I'm ruining her day, and she thought parents are supposed to love their kids unconditionally. My brothers seem to think now that I'm being a-hole, and that this is my chance to be in her life again. But I have no interest in that. Still seems everyone has a strong opinion on it, that I'm making it difficult for my daughter to have the wedding she wants when it would mean a lot to her. My son is on my side, but the comments are still wearing me down. And just for the sake of my sanity, am I being an a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. She decided that you're not her father in any capacity. You respected that. Now that the other guy is dead, she doesn't get to change the rules. She doesn't want you. She wants someone to play a part. Maybe your son can be the one to give her away instead. Or her mom can walk her down the aisle. Maybe, but my son already said he's not going to the wedding. Not over this. He just doesn't want to. So don't know what his response would be if she asked him. They're not close despite talking every now and then. Not today, home. Wow, Opie. I'm so sorry to read through your story. And some people may disagree, but I really don't think you're the a-hole. You attempted contact throughout the years, but it wasn't you that became distant. It was your daughter. She wanted to get to know her bi dad. Nothing wrong with that. But at the expense of becoming distant and eventually having no contact with you, her dad who had been there for her since she was born. Now the bi dad isn't there to walk her down the aisle. Opie, if she wanted you at her wedding, you would have gotten an invitation, and not become a stand-in for deceased bi dad. Why can't your brother walk her down the aisle? Personally, I think she just wants her wedding to look good, irrespective of how you feel. Not an a-hole at all. He said he's not going to the wedding regardless, but I'm not sure if she would ask him. Hi, Opie. I'm adopted. It is entirely possible to have a relationship with multiple sets of parents. When I found my bio dad, my adoptive dad invited him to a Father's Day barbecue. My bio dad asked if he would be stepping on his toes. My adoptive dad said more people loving my daughter is a good thing. Not day home. She's just mad that this will ruin her day. Has no concerns over your thoughts and feelings. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad I'm glad his stealing my money gave his marriage bad luck? My mom died when I was 10, and she left me money in trust with my grandparents in charge. But my dad got access to it due to him being my dad and knowing about it, and paid for his wedding with it a few months later. I hated him for it. Then afterward, he and his wife had a worse luck. She lost her job and had to take a huge downgrade, and then they couldn't have kids. Then my dad's longest friend told him he was done with him, after they'd had a fight a couple of months before that. My dad got also passed over every promotion since. I know it's not my mom, but I like to think my mom gave them the bad luck when they used her money to pay for their wedding. Though my grandparents secretly put the money to a different account and considered it my mom's money for me still, so I didn't fully miss out. But my dad didn't care if I did. I'm now 20 and kinda estranged from my dad. I saw him at my pop's, his dad's, house a couple of weeks ago, and he was ranting to me about not being there after the crap they have gone through. I told him I was glad stealing brought him bad luck, and to leave me alone. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. He reaped what he sowed. Can't blame anyone except for his a-hole self. I think this may be one for the history books as positive proof of witchcraft. Not mad about it at all. Leaving the new wife aside, I'm thinking that the reason your dad's been passed over for every promotion and the fact he used money meant for you for himself might be one and the same. I'm sure if he's that entitled and selfish, it's probably coming across in his work too. Not the a-hole. Exactly. People who would steal from their children by literally breaking the law will not all of a sudden be moral and decent human beings in every other aspects of their lives. And same thing goes for the new wife. Yep, my a-hole dad stole my inheritance. Our estrangements began with a lawsuit. Not the a-hole. But several people failed you here. A trust set up by others is meant to prevent anyone who isn't a trustee, parents included, from accessing it. Being your dad wouldn't have given him free access. He'd have needed special permission to access it, usually done through court, and he would have had to prove why he needed it and how it was being used for you. Besides that, only your grandparents would have been able to access it to give him permission since they were trustees. We believe it was the bank that ultimately failed me. The bank account my dad went in with my papers and gained access that way. My grandparents were furious. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for charging my sister full price for the costume baskets plus robes, forcing her to possibly have to return her dream wedding dress? Basically, a couple months ago, my female 19 sister 30 was telling my mom she had a really tight budget for her wedding and couldn't afford a big wedding she had dreamt of. So I offered to help her find cheaper alternatives to the decorations she wanted. She asked if I could make the bridesmaids costume baskets and robes with their names on it for less than half of what I charge, because she couldn't find someone who could make it for a cheap enough price. So I agreed. Eventually, she managed to save a lot and was able to get the dress she originally wanted. I figured everything else was fine, until last week. My sister decided she did not want kids at her wedding because she wanted the adults to enjoy themselves and drink. I still thought nothing of the sudden change, until she told me I was no longer invited to her wedding. When I asked her why, she said because I was to be considered a kid since I can't drink. She said I was still invited to the wedding rehearsal, but that's it. I told her since I wasn't invited to the wedding, to find someone else to do the costume robes plus gift baskets, or pay me full price for it. This meant she would have to return her dress because everything else she had for the wedding was already the cheapest she could find. Both my mom and dad say I'm being petty, and that I should still do it because she's my sister. Her fiancé has also called me self-centered and childish, and my brother agreed with him. Am I the a-hole here? Edit. Some people suggested she uninvited me for a different reason, but we haven't had any argument in a while. And the last big argument was last year, so I don't see what I could have done to make her uninvite me. But thank you guys for the comments. Also, I live in America, so I legally can't drink for another 2 years. But I didn't have a problem with not drinking anyways. Also adding, I was invited. I didn't assume I could go. She was there when I bought my dress. Now for the comments. Not day home. You're 19 and immediate family, not a toddler of a distant relative. Is she also going to uninvite anyone who's teetotal or simply doesn't drink? The adults can still enjoy themselves. You're in no way preventing that. Tell her that if you're considered a kid, fulfilling her request would be child labor, and you wouldn't want to encourage her to do something so unethical as to capitalize on that. I love the child labor comment. That's the reason the OP should give to her sister for not doing baskets and robes. Not stay home. I'm shocked that she would uninvite you and call you a child after using you for cheap labor. That is ridiculous. She can pay you full price or re-invite you. She doesn't have to have a wedding at all. If she can't afford some things, that's her problem. Not stay home. Yep, it would be sucky behavior even if she was some random friend or a distant relative. But own sister? Yeah, no. Next story. Am I the a-hole for publicly calling out my sister and her new husband for lying about their wedding being child-free? My stepdaughter 15 Jane has a burn scar around her neck and covers one side of her face. The reason was an accident that took place 4 years ago. And yes, she's already gotten tons of insensitive comments. But to me and her dad, she's still the most beautiful soul. Her family's been supportive and loving towards Jane. My sister and her now husband got married days ago. They told me and my husband they decided the wedding would be child-free, meaning Jane couldn't come. They asked if that'd be okay, and we said yeah, absolutely. Respect the bride and groom's rules. I've immediately arranged for Jane to stay with a friend that she calls Auntie, though Jane wanted to attend the wedding. But I explained this was a rule for everyone, and we should respect that. My husband and I got to the venue, and first thing we noticed was kids. Kids of all ages all around the venue. My husband literally stopped walking. He paused for a few seconds, looked at me, then let go of my hand and said he was out of there. He walked out, but I stood still when my mom saw me and signaled me to come join the family. But I didn't go. He asked one of the guests who had his kid with him, and he said this event allowed kids. I was seeing red at this point because I was fooled into leaving Jane at home and coming with my husband only. I ignored mom and went straight to where my sister and her husband were standing. Then I blew up at them asking why they lied about this being a child-free wedding when it wasn't. He asked them in front of everyone why they decided to basically lie to me and my husband and get us to exclude our daughter. Why? Is Jane somehow different from the other kids who showed up? My sister tried to calm me down, but I bluntly asked if it was because her step-niece has a burn scar / visible injury that she and her husband were too ashamed of. I literally heard guests saying, "Oh." Mom tried to get me to step off the stage, but I proceeded to call my sister and her husband awful, insensitive people with no respect for me or their niece. My sister started crying saying she would never, and that I misunderstood, and brother-in-law begged me to go sit. But I refused, and said I wasn't interested in celebrating / supporting their marriage after this. I walked out, and was followed by my mom and aunts lashing out saying I went out of line, and was disrespectful of the bride who is my sister for God's sake, and ruined her wedding by saying that in front of everyone. Mom said it was brother-in-law's idea, and I have a right to be mad, but I should have confronted her later, not in front of guests and ruining the event. They said eventually this was their day, and they get to decide. But still, they said I should have spoken to her privately or left instead of making a scene. Not stay home. They deserved every bit of embarrassment. Yep, just showed all their friends and family the true versions of themselves. Not stay home. What shocked me about this was that your mom clearly knew this lie was happening and didn't tell you. What did she expect? That you would be okay with it? Your daughter clearly has great parents who love her and a sucky extended family. People turn into absolute monsters over making sure their wedding looks perfect. I'll never understand why these kinds of people are so quick to ruin their relationships over trying to present a certain image to others. Not stay home. I'm glad they got called out in front of everyone for being horrible people. Your poor daughter is probably sensitive about the scar as it is. This would make her feel so much worse. I hate to think about how she'd feel if she finds out about this. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to pass down my engagement ring to my future daughter-in-law? My son Sam, 26, and his longtime girlfriend, now fiancée Emily, 26, finally decided to get married. They had announced their engagement privately to my husband and me, and after the initial excitement, they said they had something important to talk to me about. Sam wanted my engagement ring to give to Emily. Sam said this would be a great way to keep him from starting his marriage in debt, from having to buy a new expensive diamond ring. Emily also added that she has liked the look of my ring a lot and would love for me to pass it down to her. I love my engagement ring. I've worn it every day since my husband proposed to me with it. And to be honest, I still have plenty of years to live that I want to keep wearing it until I am old and gray. Also, my ring is not a family heirloom. My husband chose and bought this ring for me many years ago. So I told them that I appreciated them wanting my ring, but no, I wanted to keep it. I listed out the reasons above, and how I don't want to part with my ring yet for the rest of my still long life. However, when I am old, I would be more than happy to give it to their future children. Well, Sam and Emily weren't happy with my answer, and Sam actually called me selfish and materialistic. He said that diamonds are a scam, and asked how I could let him go into debt to buy a new ring. Emily was disappointed, and said that she had hoped that my ring could become a family heirloom, and it would be a token of accepting her into our family. I've always liked Emily, and we got along great. They also said that I could keep my wedding band, so it wasn't like they were leaving me without any rings to wear. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, and I almost can't even believe this. They're calling you materialistic? They can get married without any diamond ring at all. It's hardly a requirement. Your son is additionally an a-hole for asking you this with Emily right there in front of you. That's like a kid who asks his mother, "Can Jimmy spend the night?" with a friend there so mom can't say no. Bad enough that Emily was there too. But Emily actually piping up to express her own disappointment? This is gobsmacking. What's next? They ask to be gifted Opie's house so they don't start their marriage in debt? While we're at it, go ahead and throw in all your savings. You two are old and your life is basically over anyway. If I was Opie, I'd be seriously questioning where me and my husband went wrong in raising the self-absorbed a-hole, and how he could possibly have turned out this way. Not the a-hole. Time for them to grow up. That crap floored me too. So not the way to start off your relationship with your mother-in-law. Also, if they're so concerned about materialism and cost of a diamond, then they could always get a cheaper stone. Hell, pawn shops are full of other people's heirlooms and diamond rings for a bargain. If Opie's son is insistent on an actual diamond while still being a cheap a-hole. Edit. Thanks to everyone who commented. I liked reading about your own engagement rings and diamond alternatives. My husband did defend me, and had told our son to leave and walk it off when he started arguing with me. He said he's on my side, and would have respected my decision with the ring, but he admitted that he was happy that I still love my ring so much after all these years. First story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for refusing to take in my father's daughter?" My father cheated on my mother and got another woman pregnant. Mom immediately filed for divorce. He went on to marry the other woman. My dad didn't have much custody of me when I was little. He was nice and tried really hard, but my mom was my primary custodian and there was nothing that I wouldn't do for her. I guess the fact that he always disrespects my mom, acts like she is the reason he cheated, just made me hate him. My mother also strictly told my father that I am not to have any contact with his wife/child. This happened when I was 5. I am now 20. Right now, I don't have any family except for my father, with whom I have got all contact with. He didn't come to my mom's funeral, and that was the last straw for me. Few months ago, my father's daughter, Tracy, contacted me. Turns out that she has lost both her parents to the pandemic. She was about to go into foster care and begged me to help her. I told her very politely that I do not want to have any contact with her, and that she cannot possibly expect me to take care of her when I am just a broke college student. She told me that she had plans, and she would work, and all I have to do is not let her go into foster home. She told me that she will take care of herself. She asked me to help her as I am her sister. As I mentioned, I have no clue about this person. I don't even know if what she was suggesting was legally possible. In the end, I told her that I wasn't in any position to help her, and I don't know her. I told her that while we do have the same father, I don't consider him to be my father, and I don't consider her to be my sister. I wished her luck, but also firmly told her that I do not wish to have any contact with her. After that, I ignored any attempt she made to contact me. She has recently started trying to contact me again. I had some glimpse at the messages and she alternates between calling me monster/heartless to how awful her foster home is. I haven't responded. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. No a-holes here. She's a scared 14 to 15-year-old in foster care, and you're the only option she can see out of it. It sucks, but you aren't wrong. You don't have to have a relationship with her, and it's not like you were in any position to take care of her. It's a sucky situation, but it's probably best if you ask her to stop messaging you, and if she doesn't, block her. I understand she's going through a lot, but it doesn't give her the right to take it out on you, a stranger. Kid probably has a whole fantasy relationship with OP in her head. I know I did about my much older brothers, that they would rescue me from our father, that they loved me, that one day I'd go live with them. OP is in no position to parent this kid, but it's a bitter dose of truth for kids, sis. No a-holes here. No a-holes here, but I'm going to tell you something you definitely don't want to hear. Your dad cheated on your mom, and that was a jerk move on his part. Even stupider that he would try and blame it on her. Your mom messed up too, though. You say you had little contact with your father, and then say that your mom forbade any contact to his wife and other child. She knew that meant she was limiting contact between you and him. That literally meant you couldn't have a room in their home, no holidays together, etc. She alienated your father. And this girl is your sister, whether you want to recognize it or not. She didn't cheat on your mom. Your dad did. I'm not saying you should take her in, because not doing so is your choice and your right. I do think it's time to start critically thinking about why you worship one parent and denounce the other. Your mom may have been great, but she wasn't perfect, and it's unhealthy to idolize someone so unquestionably. Especially since it occurred when Opie was 5, I get some serious parental alienation vibes from the mom. Also, that Opie somehow thinks her dad should have come to her mom's funeral. Most people don't go to their ex's funeral, especially if that person hated them. Could dad have supported Opie in other ways? Maybe, but given the circumstances, it's difficult. Dad is the estranged parent. Mom hated dad. I've been there, and there was nothing my dad could have done to help. No a-holes here. You can't afford to take care of a virtual stranger. She sounds like a scared kid. Added to add. Though, if her parents are dead, so is your father? Really cut him off hard, didn't you? Yes, I didn't even know that he passed away until she called. Now for the second story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to adopt my sister's kid? My husband and I already have 3 kids. 2 are adopted. 1 is my biological child from a previous relationship, ages 11, 9, and 8. My sister is pregnant. She can't look after the baby. So she asked us to adopt her child as it would be a short and uncomplicated process for us, as we already know what we're doing both in terms of adoption and babies. And, as we are approved adoptive parents, who still foster from time to time, it would be simple enough to take in an extra child. However, I am concerned at my sister's behavior. She's already referring to the child as her baby, which is fair enough as the baby is growing inside of her, but it makes me worry that she won't be able to detach herself from the child. Additionally, I'm concerned that I will unwittingly become a glorified babysitter until she decides she wants to take the child back, as she has said that while she wants this baby, she's not ready yet. I have friends who have adopted relatives' children, and it becomes a mess of various boundary-related issues. Example, the bio parent telling the kid to call them mom/dad. While my kids have said they'd be okay with it, and my husband has also said so, the final concern is that if she changes her mind later and tries to take the child back, or even just trample some boundaries related to the child that will disrupt our home and upset all my kids, as the kids I have now need a stable family dynamic due to their history. When I communicated these worries to my sister, she said she might have some lingering maternal instincts because this would still be her biological child, but she feels this shouldn't be enough to talk me out of it. Both of our parents are only children, so we have no cousins/aunts/uncles who could take the baby, and while we do have 2 other siblings, neither of them is able to take the baby. She is about 6 weeks away from her due date. So, if I hold firm on refusing, she needs to start talking to adoptive parents ASAP. She's admitted that the reason she wants me to take the baby is that I am closer, and she'll be able to see her child in a way that she couldn't if the child were adopted by strangers, but insists that she can maintain any boundaries I put in place despite it still being her kid. Added to add, she also thinks we'd be a good family to adopt the child, as we're set up for another kid right now due to our fostering. We even have baby stuff in the attic and a 7-seater car, and have discussed adopting more children in the future. though we talked about doing it when the children we have right now are older. So, the inclusion of a baby wouldn't be highly disruptive to us, and my husband and I would really love having a baby in the house, and actually debated adopting a baby. I've refused, as I just don't think this is a good idea, and this has led to my sister, siblings, parents, and grandparents calling me an a-hole, saying I need to help my family and that they can't believe I would allow this baby to be surrendered to the system. And I do feel really bad, as I don't want my niece/nephew to be sent to live with strangers. I would like to be involved in their life, and I've not even given it a chance. Well, I won't be making any choices based off a poll of random people on the internet. No offense. I am wondering if anyone could provide me a different perspective. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. It sounds like she wants you to do all the hard work of actually being a parent, and she can just show up for the good bits when she feels like it. Not the a-hole. Your concerns are very valid based on her attitude and things said. Nailed it. Info. How old is your sister? Where is the father? Could he cause problems? What are the reasons your sister can't look after the baby? It very much sounds like she plans to let you do all the hard work, and then when the baby's 5/6, she'll be ready with no concern to you. Could you help the sister in other ways? If money's the issue, could she stay in your spare room for 6 months to save? If it's time, could you and another family member babysit for a few hours each day? Like you do 3 hours and someone else does 3 hours until the baby is old enough for childcare? Why are you the A for letting the kid go into foster care, but your sister isn't for not wanting to sort them a loving family because she still wants some connection? There's so many other options that can be considered that everyone jumping straight to you taking the baby makes your sister's plan pretty clear. And where are your parents in all this? Why can't they look after the child for 2 to 3 years until your sister is ready? She's 31, 2 years older than me. Boyfriend broke up with her recently, in the ballpark of 6 to 8 weeks ago, after saying he wanted to have this baby with her, but he's now saying he won't be involved at all unless she adopts the baby out. In which case, he'll sign whatever he needs to sign for the adoption to go through, and that's going to be the extent of his involvement. Sister has no financial issues. Her issue is that without the boyfriend involved, she will be a single mother, which she says she cannot do, due to the mental/emotional toll she can see motherhood taking on her and not being ready for that progression. Not the a-hole. She can try an open adoption if she really wants to see her baby, but you shouldn't take in a child if you have so many reservations. Even with open adoptions, the birth parent doesn't get to see the child whenever they want. It's normal only a number of visits throughout the year, which is the reason the sister doesn't want another couple because she won't have free access to the child. Not the a-hole. I really feel for your soon-to-be nephew/niece. Is it possible for any of your other siblings to adopt? Or your parents or grandparents? I mean, they can't necessarily call you out if they're not willing to put up. The only way I see you adopting working is if she surrenders all of her rights to you, and she respects any boundaries you make. Sibling 1 is child-free and has a lifestyle that wouldn't allow him to include a child into it, and sibling 2 has 3 kids who are under 4 years old and a 6-year-old. Our parents are in their 50s and planning on retiring soon, and grandparents are in their late 80s, so they don't have the sheer energy required to have a baby. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to have any contact with my late husband's affair child? This is a long story, so buckle up. 7 years ago, my husband passed away. A few months after he passed away, a 15-year-old teenager came to my house. She revealed that she was his daughter. His name isn't in her birth certificate, but he really stepped up after he found out that her mom died when she was 10. She went to live with her grandmother, and my husband paid her grandmother each month to help with the expenses. After my husband died, the payments stopped and her grandmother threw her out. After being homeless for a couple of weeks, she came to my house. This was a pretty big shock to me, and I cannot stress how much I didn't want this person in my house. At the same time, I couldn't leave a child homeless. So I told her that I would help her and give her a place to stay. I also warned her that I only want to help her out, and that I am not taking any maternal role and she shouldn't expect me to. She agreed. She stayed at my house from the years of 15 to 18. My kid had already gone off to college, and I didn't mind. I never acted on the resentment I felt, but at the same time, I refused to do anything that could be considered parent-like. I pretty much only provided her with food and gave her a place to stay. That's it. She left when she was 18. I didn't have any contact with her after she left. She's now 20, and she contacted me recently. She wanted to connect, and she told me that I am the only mother figure she has. She wanted to bond with me, and she wanted me to consider her a daughter to me. After some contemplation, I reminded her that it wasn't a role I was willing to take, and that it was something I warned her about very early on. I helped her because she needed it, not because I loved her. She cried and told me that it wasn't fair and I wasn't giving her a chance. The thing is, I don't think I have to. I have tried refusing politely, but she keeps pushing this, and I am about to block her everywhere. My kid, who has always refused to even talk to the girl, thinks I am right. My friends are divided on this issue. Am I the a-hole here? Now for the top comments. No a-holes here, except for your late husband. He really did drop something on you. My ex has a love child of his own. I'll say for legal reasons, allegedly. If I were in your shoes, I would have made the same choices. I wouldn't have bonded with my husband's love child, but I wouldn't have left her on the streets. I can understand her hurt, but if you can't find it in you to want to bond with her, then why force it? Would she have to force a bond with you if you wanted it and she didn't want to? Given the amount of posts on Reddit lately from people telling their partners of their children to pound sand, I really have to commend Opie for stepping up. She didn't have to, but she put her own feelings aside for the sake of the kid, and I really respect that. No a-holes here. You are not her mother. Although, I do want to point out that it wasn't realistic of you to expect a 15-year-old orphan not to get emotionally attached to you when you were the only family she had left, and you chose to open your home to her. You could consider taking on the role of an aunt or an older friend. There is a middle ground between being her mother and going no contact, and she isn't at fault here either. I think that's asking for too much. What Opie did is even more than what a lot of people would have accepted, especially when the husband was already dead. She did her fair share. No a-holes here. She's been dealt a tough hand, but you're not responsible for her. You already did a lot to help her out. Agree, no a-holes here, but I feel worst for the girl. Husband was the a-hole, not her. She didn't ask for this, and she seems to have no one. Her sibling and the closest thing to a maternal figure she has resent her for existing. Very sad. I can't imagine what that feels like.
Am I the a-hole for cutting a family member off from a trust fund? 2 years ago, I won a considerable sum in the lottery. Not a scratch-off. The real lottery, to the tune of many millions of dollars. My state does not allow anonymity, and I have many relatives who are less than financially responsible. I knew if I didn't do something, I'd spend the rest of my life being badgered. So I set up a trust for my extended family with a good chunk. How it works is if family has an emergency, they call the trustee and ask for funds, and they assess the need and gives them the money if it meets the terms set in the trust. It's to be used in situations like someone being behind in bills, medical debt, unexpected car repairs, etc. It's to help them get through tough times or major life events, not for vacations or luxury purchases. One of my cousins, let's call him Dale, applied for $75,000 for a brand new loaded pickup truck. He was denied. This was neither an emergency nor was it necessary as he had a perfectly fine vehicle. They offered $5,000 to help with down payment and taxes, and he accepted and bought the truck. This was 6 months ago. Today, the trustee brought to my attention that Dale has never made a payment of his own for the truck. He waits 2 months until he's behind, and then applies for help. The first 2 times they gave him the benefit of the doubt, but now that it's happened a 3rd time, they're rightfully suspicious. I told them to advise Dale that he can no longer get assistance for his truck payment and to get him some information on how to return it if he cannot afford it, and that we would help, within reason, to get him a much cheaper vehicle that he could afford. Well, this morning his sister Jessie sent me a screenshot of a post he made on Facebook basically bashing me, calling me a selfish prick, and ending with stating he can't wait until I die so he can inherit millions and dance on my grave. Not sure why he thinks that. Most of the money will go to my parents and then the trust, along with a few charities. So I decided to revoke Dale's access to the trust completely, as I don't feel comfortable subsidizing the lifestyle of someone who is actively hoping for my death. Jessie feels bad now for sharing the post and is asking me to reconsider. While Dale is fuming, and my aunt has said some choice words leading me to wonder if I'm an a-hole. Dale's father agrees with my decision, but many of our family split. What do you think? Edit. I know it's hard to understand why I even set up the trust to begin with. But I grew up an only child, so I've been extremely close with my cousins and consider their children my nieces/nephews, and them to be the closest thing I've had to brothers and sisters. So I don't want to see them struggle in life if I know I can prevent it without setting myself on fire. But I also am not the most objective person when it comes to them. So I created a trust and appointed a trustee to make the hard level-headed decisions. Dale is the first one to even attempt to take advantage, as the others have only requested funds during the pandemic to help with the necessities like mortgage payments and food. And so far, 2 of my nieces were given some money to help with school. The fact that he tried scamming and taking advantage of something meant to help the whole family hurt worse than the Facebook post, honestly. Now for the top comments. Not Dale. My suggestions? 1. Revoke Dale's access to the trust. If you want to give him a chance to mend his ways, make it for 5 years conditioned on Dale improving as a human being. 2. Tell all the family of your decision. Remind them that it's your money, nobody's entitled to it. That the trust was set up as you care about your family's well-being. But it's not so that any one member abuses it, as it's not fair for all the others. 3. If you want, clarify the information about the will as well, and that the trust will not suddenly see a big infusion of cash upon your death. 4. Finally, let everyone know that the rules apply equally to all, and that anyone who agrees with Dale is equally able to notify the trustee or you not want to access to the trust anymore. P.S. You are very generous and smart in setting up the trust. Keep trusting, pun intended, your instincts. Do the rest of the family not realize that Dale misusing the trust means there's less for them when they really need it? Tell Auntie if Dale takes everything he wants, someday she won't get something she needs. They probably think it's such an unfathomable amount of money that it can never be spent down to zero. And that everybody is why so many lottery winners go broke. Opie has the right idea. Open access would deplete the winnings in no time. Not Dale. Opie must really love his extended family members or close to them. Because if I won the lottery, chilly, my no game is strong. I have no problem telling people no. It would be cheaper to hire someone to just say no to the family all the time. Not Dale. It is your money. And while the trust was mainly done to avoid their badgering, it was still a generous act as they never had any right to the money to begin with. You allowed them access for emergencies, and Dale tried to take advantage of it in you, and even then he still would have been allowed to use it if he didn't go on social media and post hate. It's his own fault. Facebook is not private, so he ran the risk of you seeing it. And if he can't understand that action of consequences, he shouldn't have access to your money, especially if he is clearly waiting for you to get said money. The aunt clearly doesn't understand that access to your money is not a given, even if you are family. Dale was acting entitled and broadcasted it to the world. I would have cut him off after finding out he was trying to cheat the system personally. You have no reason to feel bad for not wanting to share with someone so hateful. The only person at fault here is Dale. If he didn't openly wish for your death on Facebook, which was just plain stupid and spiteful, then he would still be able to use the trust for emergencies. Now he has to do what everyone else does and figure it out on his own. Dale wishes for someone's death to take their cash and dance on their grave. Gets cut out of will/trust. Also Dale, shocked Pikachu face. Dude got what he deserved being greedy. Him taking cash like that takes cash away from the trust as a whole. The other relatives should be annoyed. To be fair, they're not upset that he was told no about the truck. They do think that was appropriate. It's the removing him as a beneficiary completely that some people think may be too harsh, because it means if he ever does have a legitimate emergency situation, he won't have the same family fund to fall back on. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not leaving some of my gaming consoles behind when I moved out? I, 18 male, moved out of my parents' house 6 weeks ago. We had a bad relationship for the last 3 years, and I couldn't handle living there. So I decided to stay with my best friend's parents. My relationship with my parents started to suffer when I was 12, and they became foster parents. Life changed pretty hard. They started taking in kids with all kinds of complex needs, and it led to them taking a sibling set when I was 13. And I had to give up my bedroom and move into my dad's old office, which was a box, so the boys and girls could have rooms big enough to share. We then moved to a bigger house so they could foster more kids, but I still ended up in the box room. Then we fought about me having a job, and not treating my step-siblings now that I had money of my own. From there, we pretty much fought about everything. They told me I was selfish and ungrateful. That I had so much, the least I could do was try to be a good big brother and embrace the fact they wanted to help kids. I just resented ending up in a box room and being expected to spend money on these kids. It felt like being shoved into a tiny room should have been enough sacrifice, but no. What pissed them off was how little I wanted to take part in the day-to-day stuff, like therapies, doctor's appointments, taking them to and from school, etc. Once my parents moved into the bigger house, money was super tight and they are still struggling with that now. When I moved out, I took my video game consoles, the ones I paid for. There's my PS1, PS2, PS5, Switch, and a GameCube, and my parents were pissed. They asked me to leave some of the stuff there for their foster kids, but I said no. That I had bought them and I wanted to keep them. They called me selfish again, and said the kids deserved more of those happy things with hard lives they've had. So I told them they should buy them for them then, but I'm keeping my property. They called me an a-hole and told me they were ashamed of my attitude. Am I the a-hole? Not an a-hole. They want you to parent kids that are not even theirs. Just foster. It's great that they're helping those kids, but they sacrificed their own child to help others. They shouldn't take on more than they can handle financially. I honestly don't think people should be allowed to foster if they have underage children of their own. I don't think there's anything wrong with it if they do it correctly. There are many families that take good care of their kids and foster kids. Not an a-hole. It's your property and you can do whatever you want with it. On a more serious note, please consider counseling to deal with how your parents treated you. It sounds like you have some understandable anger. Don't let it poison the rest of your life. I let hate consume me when I was younger from issues that happened when I was a child, and it ate me away until someone finally convinced me to seek help. Not an a-hole. Sorry about this decision by your parents. A broken system allows family to overstretch their limits due to the huge need for foster care. What led your parents to suddenly take in so many kids all at once? Fostering is a family decision, with specific counseling for the natural-born or previously adopted children. It helps avoid the feelings you have, which are often present even if you get to keep your room, let alone get shoved entirely to the side. Good luck building up your life going forward. They had always wanted more kids, but my mom couldn't have more after me. I think they thought me being older would make it easier, because there would be less jealousy / less need to be so hands-on with me. Like I could feed myself, get myself up, dressed, shower, homework, all that stuff. So they had time for foster kids' therapies. Next story. Am I the a-hole for insisting I get the phone back despite policy? My kids attend a year-round school and started backup for the new term 2 weeks ago. My eldest, 16 female, ended up getting her phone confiscated for using it during class to watch TikTok. We had discussed this before she even got the phone, then had some issues last year. As a last resort, I told her if that happened again, the phone would become mine, and she'd get an old flip phone that was my husband's, with no internet until she could prove trust. The school policies had changed this term from a phone would be confiscated until a parent could come get it, to a phone would be kept for 2 weeks as a first offense, 3 for second, so on and so forth. I wasn't okay with this, as I don't trust the school to not lose it. I know they've lost / broken other students' phones. Plus, I don't want them having access to my daughter's private information. I went to the school and requested it back, saying I wouldn't give it to my daughter, but I paid for it. Secretary gave me this bill, and I didn't blame her, but asked to speak with the vice principal. He comes out and repeats them. I said, okay, but I'm the parent. I paid for it, and I never signed anything giving you permission to hold it. They were refusing, so I said I'd sit in the office until it was given back. I did so, and waited for close to 2 hours. Finally, the principal came out and said I needed to leave. I said if I left, I'd be back with a police escort. At that point, the phone was returned to me. My husband says I Karen'd my way out of it. But to me, it's not their property to take. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. The school's policy is stupid. Your daughter was in the wrong. But many high school students need their cell phones for communication, like younger siblings, jobs, and medical appointments. Some kids stay home alone in houses with no landlines or drive, making having a phone a safety issue. While the school is within their rights to discipline your kid during school hours, they need to get their head out of their A and realize that there are bigger issues at play. Edit. Even stronger not a-hole in light of the fact that the school lost or broke phones. I hope they're paying the parents $800 every time that happened. I'm pretty sure it's illegal to keep someone else's property, especially for weeks. Not a-hole. Since when can schools just take private property with confidential information on it for weeks at a time? Especially knowing how often things get lost when they are confiscated. How often do you see articles of teachers/principals confiscating electronics and then selling them on eBay? I've definitely seen those stories. No thanks. They were definitely hoping you'd just get bored and leave. They have no grounds for keeping things like this. I knew it when you threatened to get the police involved. I've read at least one news story of someone who worked at a school stealing/spreading nudes off a student's phone. No, kids shouldn't have those. But teenagers are gonna be teenagers. And I was sharing underwear and swimsuit pictures to friends/boys when I was 16. And that's a case where they were caught and punished for it. Edited to add, a phone does not necessarily need to be unlocked to access photos if an ill-meaning staff member has a charger cord to hook it up to the computer, and they know how to browse to the computer's file explorer as if the phone were a connected flash drive. Teacher here. Not a-hole. What kind of whack job school is this? It is well understood in all the schools I have worked for that parents and teachers are a team working toward the same goal, the best interests of the child. Therefore, not only is the school's relationship with parents incredibly important, but parents should be looped in and consulted regarding both educational and disciplinary decisions whenever possible. You came in acknowledging that you agree that a phone should be confiscated, and ready to back that up at home by swapping your child's phone for a flip phone. So there should have been zero issue handing the phone back to you. I can't believe they choose this hill to die on. Just give the damn phone back. My god. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not getting a tattoo with my sisters and inheriting our grandma's money? My grandma is super against tattoos, as she says they don't look good on women. My two brothers have tattoos though, and that's fine with her. When she found out my oldest sister, there's 4 of us, had a tattoo, we still don't know who snitched. She took my sister out of her will. So my other sisters and I made plans for the 3 of us to get tattoos in solidarity with our sister. I said I was going to do it, but then I realized how dumb that was and decided not to do it. They went through with it though, and they were mad at me when they find out I didn't do it. My grandma took them off her will, and when she died, my 2 brothers and I inherited all her money and estates. My brothers and I gave our sisters a little bit of it, but they want us to split it equally. My sisters have been pressuring me specially, because I had said I was going to do that tattoo plan with them and didn't do it. Am I the a-hole for not getting that tattoo with them? Also, would I be the a-hole if I don't split the inheritance equally with them? I already gave them some, but they want more. You're the a-hole. You were right about it being a stupid reason to do it. Especially if it meant your brothers got all the money. And your grandma's ridiculous. But they were mad at you when they found out you didn't do it? So you promised. They went and got it done, and you didn't. No, hey, I thought about it and I really don't want a tattoo. Maybe we could find some agreement to share some of the money with sister. You knew they'd be disinherited, and you'd get significantly more money. You shouldn't be guilted or coerced into getting a tattoo that you aren't 100% sure about. But this was about the money to you. If it weren't, you could have just told your grandma to disinherit you. Dude, it doesn't sound or appear to the outside that you changed your mind and forgot to tell them. It sounds like you talked them into getting a tattoo with malicious Machiavellian intent. You're the a-hole. You took advantage of your grandma's views on women to steal inheritance from your siblings. It seems like OP planned this, and it is almost funny how she's behaving innocent. Everyone sucks here. Your grandma sucks, you suck, and your family sucks. The only fair thing to do is split it equally between everyone. If you chose to keep it, go for it. But is the money more important than your family? If so, you'd be the biggest a-hole of all.